Hi, I'm Sornin, VP of Marketing and Sales at NextVR. In 2018, I was invited to present at the Cannes Lions about the future of experiences. Here's the story, virtually real, your front row seat to the world, that I presented on the interactive stage. In the last 5 years at NextVR, we've kept one extremely subversive thought to ourselves, even though we believe it completely, and so does a good portion of the technology community. This thought is brash, and frankly, I risk pissing off some of our most important partners and shareholders by saying it. But after nearly a week on the Riviera and a good amount of rosé, I was finally ready to share this thought with the world. With the recent advances of virtual reality, this thought had become undeniable. A rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. The one on the wall also means the one on your lap or in the palm of your hands. Over the next 10 minutes, I'll explain why and take you on a journey attempting to convince you. Those attending the conference and who were brave enough to face this truth were then invited to experience the best-in-class technology in the field of virtual presence at NextVR's first public demo of high-resolution virtual reality by way of an intimate face-to-face with Peter Guber. Peter is the chairman and CEO of Manalay Entertainment, co-owner of 4 US professional sports teams, such as the Golden State Warriors, who won 6 NBA championship titles. He is an irrefutable authority in the world of sports and entertainment. I guarantee that if I haven't managed to convince you, he would. Let me begin by telling you a little bit about who we are. At NextVR, we've aired over 800 events in virtual reality. We've been recognized as one of the most innovative companies in the world when it comes to AR and VR. We know that the key to making virtual attendance as good as being physically present, let alone watching a TV screen, is realism. Realism has been the most important driver of digital imagery since the word pixel was first coined by Frederick Billingsley in 1965 to describe the picture elements from videos of the moon and Mars. You can see it in Hollywood visual effects. You can absolutely see it in video games. So why is realism so important? Because sensory information is so complex, the human nervous system can be influenced into believing that what is captured and transmitted by technology is real. If these NFL players were not framed by a screen, wouldn't you believe that they were real? The rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. Here is how NextVR is able to trick the central nervous system. Our cameras capture more than video. They capture the depth of the world around them, just as your eyes see the world. And this depth information allows us to reconstruct reality. We use a unique patented capture method called stereo orthogonal reconstruction. This illusion transports our audience into a virtual world, a near-perfect replica of the real world, as near-perfect as possible today. According to Wired magazine, what makes the NextVR experience so immersive is not what you notice, but what you don't. The rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. And this is just the beginning. Our engineers, scientists, and world benders working on our world-leading technology predict that virtual reality is going to advance faster than it ever has. Here are the 4 factors leading that change. Resolution is sharpening. Google revealed a new headset that has 10 times the number of pixels than their current Daydream hardware. The state-of-the-art right now shows 50 pixels per degree, which is only 41% of what the human eye is capable of seeing. Field of vision is expanding. At F8 2018, Facebook Oculus announced a prototype that is expanding the field of vision to a staggering 140 degrees, getting closer and closer to the human physiology of 220 degrees. Social connections are emerging. One of the main objections to VR, isolation, is fading away. With new features such as Facebook Oculus venues, thousands of users from around the world can now join experiences together in virtual reality, making everyone feel like they are there with someone. Sense of presence is developing. Hand tracking as well as early stages of full motion tracking through space are becoming increasingly accurate. Imagine you're at a concert and someone crowds in front of you. You'll be able to physically shift your position and look around that person as if you're actually there. A user posted the greatest comment on Reddit about a NextVR and Live Nation Damian Marley concert in virtual reality. It read, "It was so real, you could almost smell the weed." Can your TV do that? The rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. Still don't believe me? Let me add that the largest technology companies in the world, Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Samsung, Qualcomm, Intel, Sony, are pouring billions of dollars and millions of man-hours into virtual reality. And along with them is an armada of extremely innovative startups like us that are focused on making virtual reality better, faster, and cheaper. We're determined to change the way users consume content forever. Perhaps this guy can convince you. Remember when he set a goal for Facebook of 1 billion users? So why is the walk towards realism so important? We're just starting to understand human reaction to realism. In collaboration with the NBA, we conducted a 6-month research project that we unveiled for the first time at Cannes Lions 2018. Our methodology combined a myometric study of heart rate and respiration with in-depth interview and quantitative survey. Participants experienced NBA games through 3 viewing options: on TV, in the actual arena, and on NextVR. What did we discover? Some extremely powerful insights that could shape audience engagements in the years to come. For heart rate, when we looked at the number of times the heart rate rose above a certain beats per minute, the data reveals. On average, heart rate of participants who watched the whole game in all 3 ways rose above the active heart rate threshold of 84 beats per minute, 64 times for respondents watching on TV, 96 times for respondents at the arena, and 130 times for respondents experiencing on NextVR. The NextVR experience was 35% greater than in the arena and 103% greater than TV. So, what does this mean? And why should you care? When people get excited, epinephrine, a chemical more commonly known as adrenaline, is released into the bloodstream. This is considered an extrinsic response and causes the heart rate to increase. In our study, we isolated the one main stimulus of excitement on fans, the game. Our results reveal that virtual reality triggered an extrinsic response equivalent to a 45-year-old doing moderate cardio exercise. That means virtual reality is definitely more exciting and stimulating than sitting on the couch. The rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. Fans told us that the virtual reality experience made them feel like they were more connected to the players, the teams, the fan community, and more connected to the game of basketball. One fan said, quote, "I felt like I understood the game of basketball better." And that's not all. The effect of realism reaches deep into the nervous and neural systems. This is dopamine. Dopamine is released by the reward centers of your brain when you eat, have sex, smoke a cigarette, even when you turn on your TV. As the realism of virtual reality increases, so does the reward that comes from it. And at some point, for some content, the virtual reality reward is going to be greater than the TV reward. NextVR is not in the business of distributing addictive substances, but we are actually starting to study the effect of experiencing virtual reality on the reward center of the brain. This preliminary study design shows a model of the prefrontal cortex and tegmental area of the brain for users watching content on TV, being physically present and experiencing on NextVR. The prefrontal cortex has been implicated in cognitive behavior and decision making, amongst other things, and the tegmental area of the brain is part of 2 major dopamine pathways. In this hypothesis, the red area represents high stimulation. As you can see, there is much more red on the 2 images to your right. What you can also see is that these pictures appear very similar. We're aiming at building scientific evidence beyond the anecdotes that we already have of the impact of seeing compared to experiencing something. For instance, I'm sure that most of you have seen countless images of the Taj Mahal. But those of you who've actually been there, and I have, I'm also sure that you remember the emotions that you felt when you stepped into that garden for the very first time. This is the model we're using to guide our work to improve the effect of virtual reality on the reward center of the brain. For now, this is the hypothesis. Let's meet again to discuss the actual results of the study. I shared a subversive thought with you earlier. The rectangle on the wall is no longer good enough. Now, I have a provocative thought to share with you. Advertising is no longer good enough. To be honest, I had to look up the definition of these 2 words myself, so let me explain. Subversive means intended to disrupt an established system or institution. Provocative means causing annoyance or anger, especially and deliberately. I work in advertising, so declaring that advertising is no longer good enough definitely feels provocative. But a lot of the advertising reality that we've come to know will not be applicable when the medium and the message can trick the brain. Impressions are no longer good enough. Click-through rates are no longer good enough. Viewability standards are no longer good enough. Ratings are no longer good enough. GRPs are no longer good enough. Only experiences will be good enough. Experiences that are retained more deeply than anything seen on a screen. That is precisely what virtual reality delivers. Memorable experiences that trigger visceral connections and meaningful interactions with your audience. Wouldn't you rather be buying that over impressions or clicks or views? The virtual reality revolution is shifting content consumption from passive viewing to active experiences. I wish I could turn back the clock to see how my favorite advertising campaigns, which won Lions in the past, would be if they had been created without the limitation of a screen. Imagine how the 2011 Cannes Grand Prix winner, the interactive music video by Chris Milk, The Wilderness Downtown, would feel if you could be running alongside the hooded man through deserted streets and return to your childhood home. Taking creativity like this to the next level is the opportunity ahead. If you've waited for the adoption of virtual reality to reach this point, you have possibly missed the spark to one of the most transformative revolutions in the history of electronic media. This revolution is no different from previous revolutions in history, and history has proven too many times that revolutions can give birth to the most beautiful ideologies, or their inherent chaos can be lethal. Skepticism is in almost every boardroom, except from the companies I mentioned earlier. Investment executives are going to challenge the return on investment of every VR campaign. Traditional creative staff will struggle to expand their visions to the immersive environment. Let's overthrow the old regime. There will be chaos for a little while. No measurement standards, more complex execution, and foreign performance metrics which will be confusing at first. But in chaos lies opportunity. And if we stay unified and focused on progress, we will soon discover the metrics that define meaningful engagement. Immersive watch time will become the norm. 3D assets will be the default formats. Mixed reality will have the reach of the most popular streaming platforms. And together, we will create advertising experiences that are way better than good enough. I'm excited about this future. Can you tell? A spirit of adventure and an addiction to innovation have always driven my career and led me to the Cannes Lions stage. In 2000, I saw the potential of new technologies and co-founded one of the first digital agencies in Europe. Back then, the industry didn't even know how to track banner ads. I'm also a surfer, so in 2013, my passion for surfing took me all the way to Sydney. Fascinated by the freedom of expression with the advent of social media, I became one of the very first Twitter employees in Australia. So naturally, when the World Surf League put me in a VR headset for the very first time, and I was instantly transported to ride Teopu, the most epic wave on the planet, I understood something immediately. The rectangle on the wall was no longer good enough. For those of you who've been surfing, you know that there are two types of people at the lineup. When a huge wave is coming, one type paddles to safety and either gets wiped out or misses out on all the fun. The other type has been training for that moment and is confident enough to paddle out to the highest energy point to catch the wave. That huge wave, some people call it the last medium, is here. I know which type of surfer I am. I paddled out, switched to startup mode and joined NextVR to become a passionate advocate for transformation that only immersive media can deliver. So, which type of surfer do you want to be?